Hi, my name is Alessandra Naporowski. I grew up in a bilingual household. My mother is from Mexico, so I learned English and Spanish at the same time growing up. Being able to know Spanish has allowed me to interact not only with my family who only speak Spanish, but also with other people who speak the same language. So I've been able to learn from people who speak that language and get to interact with them and help them out as well in my work environment and in my social environments. Growing up, I didn't comprehend as a child that not everybody spoke English and Spanish. In my mind, I thought everybody understood me, and so one day when I was a kid and I was in church, I had these pigtails that my mom had put on me, and some of the girls had told me how my hair looked really nice, and they asked how my mom had done it. And so I was explaining to them how she had done it, and instead of using the word ponytail in English, I used chongo, which is ponytail in Spanish. And I kept repeating myself, and they just kept looking at me like they didn't understand what I was saying. And I was starting to get kind of frustrated, and then I realized, like they don't understand me because they don't speak that language. And then I had another situation now as an adult where I was talking to a friend who also speaks Spanish. He's from Colombia, and I was describing the situation about this girl, and I said how she was really fresa. And in Mexico, when we use the word fresa, it has two different meanings. It means strawberry, and then the other meaning, it means that they're preppy. So I was saying this girl was fresa, and she just kept looking at me, and she stopped me, and she goes, "Are you calling the girl a strawberry?" I'm like, "No, what do you mean? I'm not calling her a strawberry." And so then I then explained to her how in Mexico we use this word as another way. And she explained to me how in Colombia they only use it as strawberry. And so then I realized how even as people who speak the same language, we have words that have different meanings. And sometimes we have to be aware of that even when we're speaking with someone of the same language. Um, and I, thinking back to both of these situations, I realized how powerful language can be because um, because I didn't know the word in English at the case with the church and the girls didn't speak Spanish, we couldn't communicate correctly. So I couldn't communicate well how my mom had done my hair. And then with my friend, even though we spoke the same language, there was a misunderstanding because of different meaning of the word. Even though we both know it means strawberry, she didn't know it meant something different for where my mother's from. And then a few years ago, I did a study abroad in Italy, and even though I'm part Italian, I didn't grow up speaking Italian, so I didn't know the language, even though I knew that Spanish is similar to Italian. And when I was over there, I kind of picked up on some of the words because there's similarities from Spanish to Italian, so I was able to understand some of what they were saying, even though sometimes the meaning is different. For example, calzone in Italian is a food, but in Spanish it's underwear. So for someone who doesn't know that calzone in Italy is a food, and someone tells them, "Would you like a calzone?" they may understand, "Oh, they're offering me an underwear to eat." So it's just kind of like seeing um, how even though languages sometimes have similarities in either meaning or the same um, wording or pronunciation, how do you need to be cautious of when you speak those languages, um, no matter who you're talking to, because you never know if they have the knowledge of, and like with the strawberry, with the calzone, that they have the knowledge of that different language. Even though I grew up speaking Spanish, I took classes in school. I did not know how to read or write, so my mom wanted me to learn that as well as learn the grammar. Because even though I grew up listening to how to speak Spanish correctly, I didn't know how to conjugate certain verbs and things like that. So my mom wanted me to learn that better so that I could be fully fluent in the language, both with speaking and reading and writing. So I would be fully fluent in two different languages. I took classes all throughout middle school and part of high school. I remember my teachers having us do a lot of grammar, vocabulary in the beginning, which I think for any language that's the basic thing. Like, is you need to have the grammar and the vocab down in order to be able to have at least a small conversation or two, go to get around if you ever want to visit the country. And then as we advanced, we had to create skits. So the teacher would either put us in groups or in pairs, and we had to create a skit and then perform it in front of the class. So it would be a written grade and then as well as an oral grade on our pronunciation. We also had to listen to Spanish tapes. So it was either we were listening to a tape and then it would stop and it would allow us to respond. So it was like we were having a conversation with the tape, or it would be more like a novela, which is like a soap opera, and we would listen to it and we would answer questions on what happened in the show. But it was all audio, was never visual. Um, One of the things that my last Spanish teacher did was he would only allow Spanish in the classroom. So he never allowed English unless he specifically allowed for it. Like if it was you needed to ask an important question about an assignment, then he would allow so that there was no misunderstanding. Um, but he would give us fake pesos, which is money from Mexico, but it was fake. And if you were ever caught speaking English, you would have to pay him for speaking English because you broke the rule, kind of thing. And the pesos, if you saved them up and you didn't speak English, you could use it for like a prize, or sometimes he would have things you can buy, like a pencil. Um, Even though sometimes I found that policy a little annoying, I kind of liked it because I think at the end of the day, if you're immersed in that language, you learn to speak it a little faster. And I think, well, not faster, but you learn to understand it more. And I think that's what I would like to do with my kids is maybe not restrict them to only speak that language, but to be immersed in it, and allow them to learn it either with cards like I did when I was a kid, or just be able to have conversations with their friends. And I think sometimes, um, even though it may frustrate them, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be one of the things that benefits them. So I think for me, that would be my policy as a teacher, is to make sure that my kids can at least hold a conversation with a friend, especially when they're at such a young age. I think it's important for them to be able to interact with kids their own age and not feel like they're being left out in the classroom. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed.